The alarm bells echoed through the massive council chambers like the screams of dying worlds. Red warning lights bathed the curved walls in blood-colored shadows as delegates from 47 different species scrambled to their positions. The emergency session had been called after 3 council worlds went dark in a single day. Ambassador Kang Minho sat quietly in humanity's assigned seat, watching the chaos unfold around him. His dark suit looked plain compared to the elaborate robes and exotic breathing apparatus worn by other delegates. Humans always looked simple in this place, he thought. Maybe that was the problem. The Vorthak Empire had struck without warning. 3 peaceful worlds, millions of innocent lives, gone in coordinated attacks that showed months of planning. The holographic displays showed burning cities and refugee ships fleeing into deep space. It was the worst attack in galactic history, and somehow the other species were already finding ways to blame humanity for it. Order! Order! The council speaker, a tall blue creature with too many arms, slammed his staff against the floor. We must address this crisis with unity. Unity. Minho almost smiled at that word. Where was unity when humans had offered to help patrol the outer systems? Where was unity when Earth scientists had warned about growing Vorthak military buildup? The council had dismissed those warnings as typical human paranoia. Delegate Velthar of the Alterian Republic stood up, his golden skin gleaming under the chamber lights. This attack proves what we have long suspected, he declared, his voice carrying across the silent room. Human influence has poisoned our galaxy with aggressive thinking. Their warlike nature attracts conflict wherever they go. A ripple of agreement passed through the chamber. Minho felt his jaw tighten, but he kept his face calm. 47 years of this. 47 years of being treated like violent children, who needed constant watching. The crystalline Jeff representative chimed in, her voice like breaking glass. We should never have allowed humans into the council. They bring chaos with them. Look what has happened since they joined us. What had happened, Minho knew, was unprecedented peace and prosperity. Human medical advances had saved billions of lives. Human engineering had made interstellar travel safer and faster. Human peacekeepers had stopped 12 wars before they could start. But none of that mattered now. The humans must be restricted, announced another delegate. Their military forces should be placed under council control. We cannot allow them to act independently anymore. More voices joined in. Restrict the humans. Control the humans. Watch the humans. Always the same story. Give us your technology, your knowledge, your lives, but never expect to be treated as equals. Dr. Lee Soman watched from the observation deck above, her hands clenched into fists. She had spent 15 years working with alien scientists, sharing everything humanity had learned about medicine and biology. She had saved entire species from diseases that would have killed them. Now she listened to those same species call her people dangerous. In the chamber below, Minho slowly gathered his papers. The simple action drew confused stares from nearby delegates. He stood up, straightened his tie, and picked up his briefcase. Where is the human going? Someone whispered. Perhaps to prepare humanity's apology, another voice suggested with satisfaction. But Minho did not walk to the speaker's podium. He did not ask for permission to address the chamber. Instead, he walked quietly toward the exit, his footsteps echoing in the suddenly silent room. Ambassador Kang, Velthar called out. Where do you think you are going? We are not finished with this discussion. Minho paused at the chamber door and turned back. His voice was calm and steady when he spoke. Yes, you are. The confusion in the room was thick enough to touch. Delegates looked at each other with growing concern. They had expected anger, threats, dramatic speeches. They had not expected quiet dignity. The human delegate cannot simply leave, protested the Jeff representative. This is irregular. Everything about humanity seems to be irregular to this council, Minho replied. Perhaps it is time we stop trying to fit into irregular patterns. He walked through the door and into the corridor outside. The marble halls of the council building stretched away in both directions, decorated with symbols from every member species. The human symbol, a simple blue and green circle representing Earth, seemed small and lonely among the elaborate designs. Minho pulled out his communication device and entered a code that had not been used in 47 years. When the connection opened, his voice was still calm. "This is Ambassador Kang to Terra Command. Authorization Omega 77. Begin Protocol 7 immediately." The voice that answered was crisp and professional. "Confirmed, Ambassador. All human personnel will begin immediate withdrawal from Council space. Estimated completion time 72 hours. Understood." Minho out. He closed the device and continued walking. Behind him, he could hear the chamber erupting into confused debate. Some voices called for him to return. Others demanded that humanity be expelled from the Council entirely. They would get their wish, he thought, just not in the way they expected. Dr. Lee Soman met him at the building's main entrance. Her face was pale but determined. "Is it really happening?" she asked. "It is really happening," Minho confirmed. 47 years is long enough. They walked together toward the transport that would take them to the spaceport. Around them, the capital city of the Council world buzzed with normal life. Aliens from dozens of species went about their daily business, unaware that everything was about to change. "Will they realize what they are losing?" Soman asked. Minho looked up at the sky, where human ships were already beginning to move. Cargo, vessels, research ships, military escorts, all turning away from Council space and heading home. "They will realize it," he said quietly. "But it will be too late." The transport lifted off and headed for orbit. Below them, the Council chambers continued their emergency session, trying to deal with the Vorthok crisis. They would find solutions, Minho was sure. They were intelligent species with thousands of years of experience. They would find solutions, without humanity's help. Just like they had always wanted. Captain Park Jinwoo stood on the bridge of the test defender, watching the last of the Outer Rim defense stations power down. The massive structures had protected 3 major trade routes for over 20 years, their weapons and shields keeping pirates and raiders away from merchant ships. Now their lights were going dark one by one. "Sir, the Altarian trade convoy is requesting explanation," reported his communications officer. "They want to know why we are abandoning our posts." Jinwoo almost laughed. Abandoning their posts. The Altarians had refused to help build these stations, claiming they were unnecessary militarization of peaceful space. They had refused to help pay for them, saying the costs were unreasonable. They had refused to help staff them, declaring that humans are better suited for such violent work. But now, when the stations were shutting down, suddenly it was abandonment. "Tell them to contact the Council for further instructions," Jinwoo replied. "We are no longer responsible for protecting their trade routes." The officer hesitated. "Sir, they are saying the Council told them to contact us." "The Council made their position clear yesterday," Jinwoo said firmly. "Humanity is too dangerous to operate independently. Let them find safer species to protect, their ships." On the view screen, the last defense station went completely dark. Within hours, Jinwoo knew the first pirate attacks would begin. The raiders had been waiting for this moment, watching from hidden bases in the asteroid fields. Without human ships patrolling the routes, the merchant vessels would be easy prey. 3 systems away, Dr. Kim Yuna was packing the last of her research files. The medical station on Kepler 442b had been her home for 8 years, a place where human and alien scientists worked together to fight diseases that threatened multiple species. Her team had been close to breakthroughs that could save millions of lives. "Dr. Kim, please reconsider," begged Dr. Thalen, her Altarian research partner. "The plague affecting the Xerion colonies is getting worse. Without your enzyme research, entire cities will die." Yuna sealed the final container of samples. "The research data is in the station computer. Your people are brilliant scientists. I am sure you will find a way to continue the work." "But we don't understand your methods," Thalen protested. "Your approach to cross-species biochemistry is completely different from ours. It will take us years to figure out what you are doing." "Then you will have years to learn," Yuna replied sadly. "I wanted to share everything with you." but sharing requires trust from both sides. She handed him a datapad containing her partial research notes. It was incomplete, she knew. The real breakthrough had been in her head, in the intuitive understanding of how different alien biologies interacted. That knowledge was leaving with her. The transport shuttle waited outside the I station, along with 15 other human scientists. They had built this research facility together, turning an empty moon into one of the most advanced medical laboratories in the galaxy. Now they were walking away from it all. On New Centauri, engineer Hong Daiho watched the atmospheric processors wind down to standby mode. The massive machines had been running for 12 years, slowly transforming the planet into a world where Altarian colonists could breathe without suits. The project was 80% complete, with only 2 more years of work needed. Engineer Hong, surely we can discuss this, pleaded Colony Administrator Rethvor. 70,000 colonists depend on these systems. Without your maintenance, the atmosphere will become toxic again within months. Daiho finished entering the shutdown codes. The system blueprints are available in your colony computers. The operating manuals have been translated into Altarian. Your engineers are capable of maintaining the equipment. But it is human technology, Rethvor said desperately. Our people do not understand the redundancy systems, the safety protocols. What if something goes wrong? Then you will learn quickly, Daiho replied. He picked up his personal tools, the ones his grandfather had given him when he first became an engineer. Or you will call for help from the council. I heard yesterday that humans are too dangerous to work on such important projects. The colony administrator's golden skin turned pale. That was political talk, nothing more. Surely you understand we need you here. I understand that you need our work, but not our people, Daiho said quietly. That is not a sustainable arrangement. Most critical withdrawal was happening in the neutral zone, where Lieutenant Commander Yoon Ji-won commanded the peacekeeping fleet. For 20 years, human ships had patrolled the buffer region between 3 hostile species, preventing conflicts that could escalate into galactic war. Ma'am, we are receiving desperate transmissions from all 3 sectors, reported her tactical officer. The Kethmal, the Zirions, and the Vorthak border forces are all demanding to know our withdrawal schedule. Ji-won smiled grimly. I find it interesting that they suddenly care about our schedule. Last week they were complaining to the council about our aggressive patrol patterns. The Kethmal admiral is requesting immediate talks, the officer continued. He says the situation will become unstable without our presence. The situation has been unstable for 20 years, Ji-won replied. We kept it stable. Now they will have the chance to prove they can do it themselves. The last human peacekeeping vessel jumped to hyperspace 12 hours later. Within minutes, the first border incident occurred when a Kethmal patrol ship accidentally crossed into Zarian territory. Without human mediators to calm the situation, both sides called for military backup. Back on Earth, Fleet Admiral Nam Sung-ho monitored the withdrawal from his command center in Seoul. Status reports flowed across, his screen showing human personnel and equipment streaming back from across the galaxy. Ships, scientists, engineers, peacekeepers, all coming home after decades of service to species that had never truly appreciated them. Admiral, the exodus is proceeding ahead of schedule, reported his aide. All critical personnel will be clear of council space within 60 hours. What about requests for exceptions? Sung-ho asked. Any aliens asking individual humans to stay? Thousands of them, sir. Research partners, colony administrators, military commanders, trade officials. They are offering significant incentives. Sung-ho nodded. It was tempting for many humans to accept. They had built lives and relationships in council space. But the withdrawal had to be complete to send the right message. No exceptions, he decided. This is not a negotiation. Either they want us as equals or they do not want us at all. The communication channels buzzed with increasingly frantic messages from council worlds. Trade routes were under attack. Medical emergencies were becoming crises. Terraforming projects were failing. Peace negotiations were breaking down without human mediators. But Earth's response remained the same. Humanity is focusing on internal development. We wish the Council success in their future endeavors. It was polite, respectful, and completely final. On the outer edge of the Sol system, the last refugee ship arrived carrying human civilians from the farthest Council worlds. Captain Lee Minjae welcomed them aboard with relief and sadness. Relief that they were safe, sadness that they had to leave their homes. "How bad is it out there?" he asked the ship's commander. "Worse than we expected," came the reply. "The Council species are already fighting among themselves about who should take over human responsibilities. No one wants to pay the cost, but everyone wants the benefits." Minjae looked out at the stars, at the vast galaxy that humanity was turning its back on. "Maybe they will figure it out." "Maybe," the commander agreed. "But I doubt it will be quick enough to matter." The great exodus was complete. Humanity had walked away in silence, leaving behind 47 years of careful work and patient cooperation. What came next would prove whether they had been valued partners or simply convenient servants. 6 months after humanity's withdrawal, the Kepler Medical Station reported its first major disaster. The facility that had once been the pride of interspecies cooperation now struggled with basic operations under pure alien management. Dr. Thalen stared at the contamination readings with growing horror. 47 Vorthak refugees had died from what should have been a simple treatment for radiation poisoning. The enzyme therapy that Dr. Kim Yuna had developed worked perfectly when administered, correctly, but without her knowledge of human Vorthak biochemical interactions, the dosage calculations had been wrong. "How could we make such a basic mistake?" demanded Dr. Zeltar, the new station director. His crystalline body reflected the red warning lights that now seemed to flash constantly in the medical bay. "The human calculations seemed wrong to us," Thalen explained miserably. "The enzyme concentrations looked too high for Vorthak physiology. We adjusted them downward to be safe." "Safe," Zeltar repeated bitterly. 47 beings are dead because we thought we knew better than human medicine." The plague that Kim Yuna had been close to curing was now spreading across 4 star systems. Her partial research notes made sense individually, but the breakthrough insight that tied everything together was gone. The alien scientists could see the pieces of the puzzle, but they could not understand how they fit. Meanwhile, the galactic economy was crashing in ways no one had predicted. Trade Minister Lim Hee-jin had quietly managed the complex resource exchanges between 12 different species for over 15 years. Her replacement, a committee of 6 alien economists, could not agree on basic principles. The Alterians wanted to maintain fixed exchange rates that favored their manufacturing sector. The Kethmol demanded floating rates that would help their agricultural exports. The Zhef insisted on energy-based currency that reflected their power production advantages. What had once been smooth cooperation became 3 separate trade wars within a month. "This is impossible," declared Committee Chair Vexthul during their daily emergency meeting. "Every species wants terms that benefit only themselves. How did the human manage to satisfy everyone?" "Perhaps," suggested his aide. Carefully, she convinced them to accept terms that were fair to all parties. Vexthul's tentacles writhed in agitation. Fair to all means profitable to none. It makes no economic sense. But the numbers spoke for themselves. Under human management, galactic trade had grown by 400%. Under alien committee management, it was shrinking by 10% each month as species imposed retaliatory tariffs and import restrictions. The neutral zone had become anything but neutral. Without human peacekeepers mediating disputes, the 3 border species had fallen into open conflict. Admiral Kesmore of the Kethmol fleet faced off against Zerion battle groups across a line that used to be maintained by a single human destroyer. "The Zerions are massing forces in Sector 7, his tactical officer reported. "Intelligence suggests they plan to claim the entire Rigel mining system. Then we will reinforce Sector 7 with everything we have," Kesmore decided. "We cannot allow such aggression to succeed." 3 days later, the first major battle erupted when nervous Zerion gunners fired on what they thought was a Kethmol invasion fleet. It was actually a merchant convoy that had gotten lost without human navigation. Beacons. Within hours, both sides were calling for reinforcements. The Joint Council peacekeeping force that had replaced the humans lasted exactly one engagement. When faced with actual shooting, the mixed alien crews discovered they could not agree on basic tactics. Some wanted to retreat and call for negotiations. Others wanted to attack immediately. A few wanted to try economic sanctions instead of military action. While they debated, the war spread to 6 more systems, but perhaps the most visible disasters were the terraforming failures. Engineer Hong Daiho's atmospheric processors on New Centauri began breaking down after 8 months without proper maintenance. The alien engineers had followed the manual perfectly, but they did not understand the underlying principles that made the systems work. Colony Administrator Rethvor watched helplessly as the atmosphere readings slowly turned red. The oxygen levels were dropping while toxic gases increased. 70,000 colonists faced evacuation or death. The backup systems should have activated, protested Chief Engineer Maltine. The human manuals clearly state that redundant processors would take over automatically. Then why are they not working? Rethvor demanded. Maltine studied his instruments with growing confusion. The backup processors are running, but they are not producing the right atmospheric mix. Something in the chemical balance calculations is wrong. What they did not understand was that Hong Daiho had programmed the systems with adaptive algorithms that learned from the planet's changing conditions. The backups were not simple replacements, but intelligent systems that required ongoing calibration, based on seasonal variations, solar radiation cycles, and geological changes. Without that knowledge, the backup systems were running blind, producing a slowly poisonous atmosphere that would kill everyone on the planet within a year. Similar failures were occurring on 17 different terraforming projects. Worlds that had been successfully transformed over decades were reverting to their original hostile conditions. Millions of colonists faced evacuation or death, but the Council lacked the transport capacity to move so many beings. The Alterian delegate Velthar, who had been most vocal in criticizing humanity, now stood before an increasingly empty council chamber. Half the member species were dealing with crises that left them no time for political meetings. "We must acknowledge our error," he said quietly to the few delegates present. "The humans were not our enemies. They were the foundation that held our civilization together." "Acknowledging error will not solve our problems," replied the Jef representative. Her crystalline form looked dimmer than usual, reflecting the reduced energy flowing through their dying worlds. "We need solutions, not apologies." "Then we must ask for humanity's return," Velthar suggested. "On what terms?" asked the Kethmol delegate. "What could we offer them that would make them forgive our treatment?" The question hung in the air like a judgment. What could they offer? Full membership had been theirs already, and the Council had made it clear that was not enough. Equal status? They had never been denied equal status officially, just treated as inferiors in practice. On Earth, Director Choi Min-soo monitored the galactic situation from the newly expanded Terra Strategic Command. The planet had become a fortress of innovation, with humans finally free to develop technologies without sharing every breakthrough with species that had never trusted them. "The crisis reports are getting worse," his aide reported. 17 worlds facing atmospheric collapse, 4 separate wars, pandemic diseases spreading unchecked, and economic chaos across 20 systems. "Any requests for assistance?" Choi asked. "Hundreds per day. But they are all asking for help while still maintaining that humans are dangerous and unpredictable." Choi nodded grimly. The aliens wanted human solutions but not human involvement. They wanted the benefits of human expertise without acknowledging human value. It was the same pattern that had driven humanity away in the first place. "Continue monitoring," he decided. But no responses. They chose to exclude us from their future. Now they can face that future alone. Outside his window, construction continued on the new research facilities that would make Earth the most advanced world in the galaxy. Human scientists worked on projects they had only dreamed of before, freed from the need to share every discovery with species that might use that knowledge against them. The galaxy was learning, too slowly and at too high a cost, that some foundations, cannot be removed without bringing down the entire structure. But the lesson was coming too late for millions of beings who would pay the price for their leaders' pride and prejudice. 2 years after the human exodus, Counselor Prime Zethkar of the Alterian Republic stood alone in his private chambers, staring at reports that made him feel sick. The Galactic Council was dying, and everyone knew it. The Vorthak Empire had conquered 6 more worlds in the chaos that followed humanity's departure. Their war fleets moved freely through space that had once been protected by human peacekeepers. Council members who had complained about human militarization now begged for protection from anyone willing to fight. Medical disasters had killed over 2 million beings across 12 systems. The plagues that Dr. Kim Yuna had almost cured were now spreading unchecked. Alien scientists had the data she left behind, but they could not understand her breakthrough insights into cross-species disease transmission. The terraforming failures were the worst of all. 17 colony worlds faced complete atmospheric collapse. Over 50 million beings needed evacuation, but the Council transport fleet could barely handle 1/10 of that number. Entire civilizations would die because they could not maintain the systems that humans had built for them. Zethkar activated his personal communication system and entered the codes for a direct channel to Earth. The connection took several minutes to establish, routed through multiple security relays. When President Jiang Minjun's face finally appeared on the screen, Zethkar felt his pride crumble. "Counselor Prime," Jiang said politely, "this is unexpected. How may Earth assist the Council today?" The formal courtesy hurt worse than anger would have. Zethkar had expected threats or demands for apology. Instead, he faced the same respectful professionalism that humans had always shown, even when the Council treated them as dangerous children. "President Jiang," Zethkar began, then stopped. The words were harder to say than he had imagined. "The Council, we request humanity's return, full membership, equal voting status on all matters." Jiang's expression did not change. "That is generous of the Council, Counselor Prime. However, Earth is currently committed to other projects. Perhaps in the future, circumstances may allow for renewed cooperation." "Other projects?" Zethkar felt desperation creeping into his voice. "People are dying out here. Entire worlds are becoming uninhabitable. The economy has collapsed. We need human expertise to survive." The Council made it clear that human expertise was dangerous. Jiang replied calmly. "You blamed our aggressive influence for attracting the Vorthak attacks. You said our technology disrupted the cosmic balance. Surely you can solve these problems better without our dangerous involvement." The words were Zethkar's own, spoken in the emergency session 2 years ago. Hearing them repeated back to him felt like physical blows. "We were wrong," he said quietly. "I was wrong. Humanity was never the problem. We were too proud to see how much we depended on you." "Dependency was not what we wanted," Jiang said. "We wanted partnership. We wanted to be treated as equals contributing to a common future. Instead, we were treated as useful servants who should be grateful for the privilege of serving their betters." "What would it take?" Zethkar asked desperately. "What could the Council offer to convince humanity to return?" Jiang was quiet for a long moment. "The Council has nothing to offer that interests us, Counselor Prime. We are building something new here, something better than what we left behind. Why would we abandon that to return to a system that never valued us?" The connection ended, leaving Zethkar staring at a blank screen. He had offered humanity everything they had supposedly wanted, and they had rejected it without discussion. The realization that hit him was worse than any military defeat. Humanity no longer needed the Council at all. On Earth, the truth of that realization was visible everywhere. Dr. Shin Yunji had perfected atmospheric processors that worked 3 times faster than the old designs. Her new systems could terraform a planet in 5 years instead of 15, and they were completely automated with self-repairing components. Captain An Suho commanded a space fleet equipped with technology that made Council ships look primitive. Human vessels now used clean fusion reactors that produced no waste. Their shields could absorb energy weapons and redirect the power to their own systems. Their faster-than-light drives could cross the galaxy in days instead of weeks. Researcher Park Yeri had solved the energy crisis using quantum field manipulation that extracted power directly from space itself. Entire cities now ran on generators the size of shipping containers, providing unlimited clean energy without any fuel requirements. But perhaps most impressive was the social transformation. Without the constant need to prove themselves to suspicious aliens, humans had relaxed into their natural cooperative nature. Scientists shared research freely because they all worked toward common goals. Engineers collaborated on massive projects without worrying about technology theft. Military officers focused on protection and exploration instead of proving they were not aggressive monsters. The first desperate diplomatic missions began arriving at the edge of human space, only to be politely turned away by automated message systems. The response was always the same. Earth appreciates the Council's interest in renewed relations. However, we are not currently accepting diplomatic contact. Please contact us again in 50 years. 50 years. The aliens who heard that message understood its meaning. By then, most of their current crises would be resolved one way or another. Their civilizations would either adapt and survive, or they would be extinct. Either way, the immediate problems would be over. Some species tried different approaches. The Kethamol sent military ships to demand human assistance, only to discover that Earth's defense systems could disable their vessels without firing a shot. The attacking fleet found itself drifting helplessly in space with all power systems shut down. Human rescue ships arrived within hours to tow them to the nearest Council world, along with a polite note explaining that aggressive behavior would not be tolerated in human space. The crystalline Jeff tried economic pressure, threatening to cut off trade in rare crystals that human technology depended on. They were surprised to learn that humans had already developed synthetic alternatives that worked better than natural crystals. The threatened embargo would hurt the Jeff far more than it would hurt humanity. The Alterians attempted bribery, offering vast sums of money and valuable resources in exchange for human assistance with their collapsing colonies. The human response was even more cutting than rejection: complete silence. Earth did not even bother to reply to their offers. Meanwhile, the crises continued to worsen. The Vorthak Empire discovered that conquering territory was easier than governing it. Without the economic networks that humans had maintained, without the medical systems they had built, without the infrastructure they had designed, the new Vorthak territories were collapsing into chaos. Emperor Kosvak of the Vorthak had expected his conquered worlds to provide resources and wealth. Instead, they consumed his empire's reserves trying to deal with problems that human expertise had once solved automatically. The plague worlds could not produce food. The failed terraforming projects could not support populations. The collapsed trade routes could not move goods. Intelligence Director Ryu Taihun monitored the situation from his office in the Seoul Strategic Center. His reports painted a picture of an empire eating itself alive through expansion it could not manage. The Vorthak homeworld is requesting humanitarian aid, his aide reported. Disease and starvation are spreading through their core systems. From whom are they requesting aid? Ryu asked. The Council first, but the Council has no resources to spare. Now they are sending messages toward human space. Ryu nodded thoughtfully. The species that had started the crisis by attacking Council worlds now faced the same problems as everyone else. Without human systems to maintain stability, even the aggressors were suffering. Continue monitoring, he decided. But no responses to their requests. They chose to solve their problems through conquest. Let them face the consequences of that choice. The galaxy was learning that respect could not be demanded or taken by force. It had to be earned through consistent actions over time. The species that had dismissed human contributions now understood their true value. But understanding had come too late to matter. Human space had become a fortress of innovation and prosperity, while the rest of the galaxy slowly collapsed into chaos. The choice of whether to help rebuild would be humanity's to make on humanity's terms, when humanity decided the time was right. For now, the answer was silence. 5 years after humanity walked away, the Galactic Council officially dissolved. The ceremony was small and sad, attended by only 12 species representatives in a chamber built for 47. Most of the others were either extinct, conquered, or too busy with survival to care about political formalities. Fleet Admiral Ko Soo-jin watched the final council session from the bridge of the TSS Indomitable, humanity's newest and most advanced warship. The vessel hung in space near the edge of the old council territory, monitoring the collapse of everything the aliens had tried to build without human help. "Admiral, we are receiving another surrender request," reported her communications officer. "The Kethmal Maritime Federation is asking for terms." Soo-jin studied the tactical display showing Kethmal space. Their ocean worlds were burning, invaded by Vorthek forces that had grown desperate enough to attack even the strongest remaining council species. The proud maritime civilization that had once dismissed humans as land-dwelling primitives now had nowhere left to turn. "What are they offering?" Soo-jin asked. "Complete territorial surrender, full access to their technology databases, and 20% of their remaining fleet as tribute." It was more than the Kethmal had ever offered. When they were strong, fear made them generous in ways that prosperity never had. But Soo-jin knew that tribute and surrender were not what humanity wanted from the galaxy. On Earth, Prime Minister Won Ji-hoo was making final preparations for an announcement that would reshape interstellar politics. The Seoul Convention Center had been expanded to accommodate representatives from dozens of species, including many that had never been part of the original council. "Are we ready?" he asked his senior staff. "The Commonwealth Charter has been finalized," reported his aide. 17 species have already submitted formal applications for membership. "Including any former council species?" 3 so far. The remaining Alterian colonies, the Jeff Crystal domains, and surprisingly, 5 breakaway Vorthak systems that have rejected their empire. Ji-hoo nodded thoughtfully. The new Commonwealth would be nothing like the old council. Membership would be earned through contribution, not inherited through political connections. Species would prove their value before gaining voting rights, not receive benefits simply for showing up. The announcement ceremony was broadcast across human space and beyond, reaching species that had never heard of Earth before humanity's withdrawal. Won Ji-hoo stood at a podium surrounded by flags from dozens of worlds, speaking to a galaxy that had finally learned to listen. "The Terran Commonwealth is now open for membership," he declared. "We welcome any species that wishes to contribute to a cooperative future based on mutual respect and shared responsibility." Ambassador Song Mi-young watched from New Geneva Station, the massive diplomatic complex that orbited Centauri Prime. The station had been built in just 3 years using advanced human construction techniques, creating a facility larger and more sophisticated than the old council chambers had ever been. "Ambassador, the first application review is scheduled for tomorrow," her assistant reported. "We have 43 species requesting evaluation." "What about the review criteria?" Song asked. "All applications will be judged on the same standards: technological contribution, political stability, economic productivity, and commitment to peaceful cooperation. No species gets special treatment based on size, age, or historical importance." It was a radical change from council politics, where ancient species had automatically received senior status regardless of their actual contributions. In the Commonwealth, a young civilization that invented useful technology would have more influence than an old empire that contributed nothing but empty prestige. The first species to be accepted was the Navari, a peaceful race of skilled engineers who had never been invited to join the council because they were too small and insignificant. Their application included blueprints for improved food synthesis systems that could feed billions more efficiently than existing technology. The second acceptance went to the Quillen, master biologists who had developed treatments for several genetic diseases. They had been rejected by the council for being too focused on unimportant medical research instead of military or economic power. Dr. Kang Subin supervised the integration process from her office on New Geneva Station. As the Commonwealth's first director of interspecies medicine, she worked with alien doctors who actually wanted to learn from human techniques instead of dismissing them as primitive or dangerous. Doctor, the Vorthak refugees from the rebellion. Systems are requesting medical assistance, reported her assistant. Subin looked up from the research data she was reviewing. The Vorthak Empire had finally collapsed completely, torn apart by rebellions, plagues, and economic failure. Millions of Vorthak civilians had fled their homeworld, seeking refuge wherever they could find it. What kind of assistance? She asked. Basic. Medical care for disease refugees, and they want to establish a research partnership to help fight the plague spreading through former Vorthak territory. It was ironic. The species whose attack on Council worlds had triggered humanity's withdrawal now came begging for the medical help they had indirectly caused humanity to take away. But Subin had not become a doctor to punish people for their leaders' mistakes. Schedule a review meeting, she decided. If they can prove they are committed to peaceful cooperation, we will consider their application. The Commonwealth's approach to former enemies was practical rather than vengeful. The breakaway Vorthak systems that rejected their empire's aggressive policies were welcomed as potential members. The imperial diehards who still believed in conquest were simply ignored until they collapsed or changed their minds. Intelligence Director Ryu Taehoon monitored the process from his expanded facility in Seoul. The Commonwealth Intelligence Service was unlike anything the old council had possessed, focused on cooperation and mutual defense rather than spying and political manipulation. Sir, we are receiving reports that the old council chamber building has been abandoned, his aide reported. The last maintenance staff left yesterday. Ryu nodded without surprise. The massive structure that had once been the center of galactic politics was now just an empty monument to failed cooperation. Species that had once competed for prestigious office space now struggled to feed their populations. What about the Alterian Republic? He asked. Councillor Prime Zethkar submitted a personal application for Commonwealth membership yesterday, not on behalf of his government, but as a private individual seeking refugee status. That was surprising. Zethkar had been one of the most vocal critics of human involvement in galactic affairs. Now he was asking to join a human-led organization as a refugee. What does he offer? Detailed information about Alterian governmental structure and economic systems. He claims his knowledge could help Commonwealth analysts understand how to avoid the political mistakes that destroyed the Council. It was valuable information, Ryu had to admit. The Commonwealth was determined not to repeat the Council's failures, and understanding those failures was the first step toward avoiding them. The most dramatic change was visible in former Council space itself. Without human peacekeepers, without human economic management, without human technological support, the region had become a patchwork of tiny independent systems struggling to survive alone. Some had succeeded by adapting quickly and developing their own solutions to problems that humans had once solved for them. These successful systems became natural candidates for Commonwealth membership. Others had failed completely, their populations scattered as refugees or absorbed by stronger neighbors. A few had simply gone silent, their communication systems failing and their societies collapsing into primitive isolation. Captain Park Do-yoon commanded a Commonwealth exploration ship that surveyed the abandoned regions, mapping what was left of the old interstellar civilization. His reports painted a picture of a galaxy that had forgotten how to work together. We found another dead system today, he reported to Fleet Command. The Xerion research colony on Kepler 186F, population 0, all installations abandoned. Looks like they evacuated about 6 months ago. Any sign of where they went, came the reply. Long-range sensor tracks suggest they headed toward Commonwealth space, probably seeking refugee status. More and more species were making that choice as the years passed. Rather than struggle alone in the ruins of their old civilization, they came to human space seeking a chance to start over in a system that actually worked. Dr. Lee Selman, now Director of Commonwealth Scientific Cooperation, welcomed the refugee scientists with a mixture of satisfaction and sadness. Satisfaction that their expertise would not be lost. Sadness that it had taken such a complete collapse for the aliens to accept human partnership as equals. How many applications do we have pending? She asked her staff. Over 200 species or system groups, came the reply, plus individual applications from about 50,000 professional scientists engineers and medical personnel seeking to work on Commonwealth projects. It was more than the old council had ever managed to attract, even at its height. The difference was that Commonwealth membership meant something. Members contributed to shared projects that benefited everyone. They participated in research that advanced the common good.